All right, guys. So back to this here. For part 2 of this, I want to hurry up and get through this quickly because I have so much amazing stuff to show you guys. This is really going to blow you away. All right, you got to see this. So I want to hurry up and get through this. All right, Elijah, Trump, and the rain. So now, January 20th, 2017 was the day Trump was inaugurated. Okay, this is when Obama received a political head wound because his power was taken away from him. The sixth king lost his power. He is fallen just like the other 5, and the one that was to come and must continue a short space, the 7th king, Donald Trump, was sworn in on January 20th, 2017. Now, what happened was on that day, right when after Trump was inaugurated, when he went to make his speech at the podium, the moment he stepped to the podium, rain began to fall. Okay, the rain specifically started when he stepped to the podium. Now, that in itself was significant, but God made sure that it was noticed by two of his witnesses. Remember, the 2 witnesses are Gentiles and Jews. Okay, so he made sure it was noticed by two witnesses. Franklin Graham, son of Billy Graham, who is of course is a Gentile, and Rabbi Marvin Hier, both, when they came to the podium to speak, both pointed out the same thing. They both pointed out that when Trump came to the podium, the rain began to fall. And they both spoke about the significance of rain in the Bible and how rain was a sign of God's blessing. Now, we know that rain is also a sign of it's also a judgment, as it was with the flood, the rain for 40 days and 40 nights, destroying the world. But rain in the Bible is for those who are on the side of the positive for God, in God's favor. It's a sign of God's blessing. The rain was given to farmers for their crops and things like that. But it's a sign of blessing. For those who are under God's judgment, it's a sign of judgment and destruction. So 2 witnesses, one Gentile, one Jew, Franklin Graham and Rabbi Marvin Hier, pointed out how the rain began to fall at the moment Trump came to the podium. So Trump, the 7th king, represents judgment and blessing of rain. Okay? He is a rain delay. He represents God delaying his judgment, his reign of judgment, because the actions of the king, Trump, are right in the eyes of the Lord because of righteous actions in trying to, being the first president to not only just 3 months after being inaugurated in April, he was the first president to ever do anything to try and stop abortions by signing the executive order that states could block funding to Planned Parenthood, but also the first president to acknowledge that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. So, and other things he did as well. He represents a delay on God's reign of judgment, but also he represents the reign of blessing being poured out by God because of the actions of the king. So, as we were talking in Renee Moses' video, May 14th, 1948 was the rebirth of Israel. And from 70 years, just as it says in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel talked about the 70 years that he knew about from calculating from the prophecy that was given to Jeremiah, 70 years. And then at the end of that is when God would judge the nations, starting with Babylon. 70 years to the day brought you to May 14th, 2018. Renee Moses already talked about this in her videos. Then the 2 witnesses, just as we saw with Franklin Graham and Rabbi Marvin Hier. So on this day, May 14, 2018, the exact 70-year anniversary was when Trump did what he said he was going to do in December of the previous year, 2017, and he moved the embassy, U.S. embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, signifying that the U.S. was standing up for Israel and proclaiming that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and not some phony made-up Palestine. So at that point, God delayed his reign of judgment, and the 2 witnesses began to pray for blessings, because in Israel they began to pray for God's blessing upon their nation and upon the nation of America, as a result of what had been done by the modern-day Cyrus, by Trump blessing them the way he did. God said, I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. So prayers of blessings went up for Israel and America. And so the reign of judgment was stopped by Trump and 2 witnesses, WIT witnesses. Okay. So that's what happened on that day. And we know that in Revelation 11, it tells us that the time of the praying of the two witnesses would be 1,260 days, which, as Renee Moses pointed out, brings you to October 24th of this year, 2021, which was on the Jewish calendar, the 17th day of the second month. God wanted us to see that the 17th day of the second month would be important, even though the Jews are a month too early. They're off by a month. God wanted us to see that so we would look forward one more month into November to what will be the true 17th day of the second month on God's calendar. And now that the moon has been sighted on November 6th in Israel, we know that November 7th is the first of the second month, the first day of Cheshvan, or what was called Mar Cheshvan. And so counting that out to the 17th day brings you to November 23rd. The evening of the 22nd to the evening of the 23rd will be the start of the 17th day of the second month. Now, what's important to point out is that after the rain began to fall, as we saw in Kings chapter 18, verse 41, and I'll go to that now. But what we saw was that if you continue reading into verse 19, you see that Elijah then goes into the wilderness for a time of prayer and fasting that lasted for, wait for it, 40 days. So you guys can see the connection. That's 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 41. I'm going to read it right here. And it says that, and Elijah said unto Ahab, get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. And I told you I'm going to tell you the significance of it being verse 41. I'll get to that in another video. So it says, Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And he said, go again 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And verse 45 says, and it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. Now notice that's verse 45, again connecting to Trump, king number 45, 45th president. And that is when it says, and it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. Okay, so now, looking at this, as I said, the second month, 17th day, is November 23rd, and it began on the evening of the 22nd to the 23rd, second month, 17th day, plus 40 days of rain, would take you to, as insane as this is, sorry for you guys that can't see it, but it would take you to December 31st and January 1st. Okay, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Now, that is truly amazing that 40 days leads you to New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Why is that significant? Sorry, I was moving my screen as much as I was. I apologize for that, guys. Why is that significant? But here's the reason why. Because for 3 straight years, and you would have to look it up to see what years this was. I'm not exactly sure. But for 3 straight years in a row in the state of Arkansas, and of course you have Ark at the beginning of that, A-R-K, like the Ark of Noah. In Arkansas, there was an event that happened on New Year's Day 3 years in a row. And what happened was that massive amounts of birds, flocks of birds, fell from the sky and fell dead. They were found in the ground dead, like thousands of birds, okay? And it happened 3 years in a row in Arkansas. All right, so again, Ark, A-R-K. This represented how God caused the floodwaters to prevail so high above the mountains, as it says in Genesis chapter 7, that even the strongest birds, even the birds with the strongest ability to fly, the strongest wings, could not escape the judgment of water on the earth. That's why God had the water to rise so high above the mountains, so that even the fowls of the air that were strong enough couldn't climb high enough in the sky to escape the flood. God made sure that he truly did destroy every living thing he created, except, of course, Noah and the 7 people in the ark, which represents Jesus and his 7 churches, his bride. Jesus is the ark. Of course, Noah represents Jesus and the 7 people with him, his family, representing the 7 churches, okay? So We literally have November 23rd being the first day of the 17th day of the second month. That would be day one of the reign. And 40 days and 40 nights takes you to New Year's Day, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, which is exactly when, and again, you have to look up what years this was, because I'm not exactly sure what years it was, but 3 years in a row, massive amounts of birds fell dead from the sky. Perhaps God pointing to a future event of death and destruction on New Year's Eve / New Year's Day. Just something to think about, guys. I mean, I just wanted to put that out there to you, but there's so much more to get to, and I'm going to get to that right now in the next video. So let's continue with this, but we had to get that out of the way so that you can understand and move forward. Wait till you see what we have next here.